Hello, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Fluently Forward. Today on the podcast, we are going to be talking about Alex Cooper and the Unwell Network, which is kind of par for the course of Fluently Forward. One of our very first podcast episodes back in 2021 was talking about Call Her Daddy, Alex Cooper, Sophia Franklin, the dissolution of their podcast, a little bit about both of the girls individually, together. We covered a lot of it, and it was one of the most listened to episodes that this podcast has ever done. And now it's 2026, and some things have changed. Obviously, the Unwell Network is now spanning all of these different shows and podcast series and spinoffs. And we have this like reality competition that at the time this podcast comes out is happening. But since I recorded that episode, I just have a lot of thoughts on Alex Cooper, and things have also changed. We've had Sophia Franklin on the podcast, Fluently Forward. Alex Cooper, I think her net worth has gone from like 60 million to 125 million. She launched this entire media empire, which of course was called Unwell, which is something that Sophia Franklin came up with herself. She got married to a Hollywood producer that she met on a Zoom call. She signed a bunch of talent. And now, this week, the reality competition show that she has is launching on YouTube with a really, really chaotic cast. So we're going to get into absolutely everything. I do need to say my bias up front. If you're a fan of Alex Cooper, you're probably not going to like this episode, okay? I just have to be honest with my opinions. I don't like Alex Cooper. Back in the day, I thought that the original Call Her Daddy podcast was gold. I'm one of the only people to say this because so many people are like, it was so trashy. They talked about nasty sex things. There were a lot of things, quote unquote, problematic with the podcast, but I just thought it was unbelievable. I thought that the dynamic of Alex and Sophia together, even though I feel like history has tainted it, I'm sure that there were ups and downs, but there was really a lot of magic between these two girls. You don't get to being one of the number one podcasts in the entire world without having some validity to what you're doing. A lot of people think Call Her Daddy popped off because it was about raunchy sex tips and talking about all of this outrageous stuff. But I also think it was tuning into two girls' friendships. And I almost think in the way that the All In podcast with not Peter Thiel, the other PayPal guy. It's like these four billionaires and they have a podcast called All In, and it does really well. And I think a big draw of that podcast is that people want to be eavesdropping in on a conversation between four billionaires. That to me is one of the reasons why the All In podcast is so successful. And I almost think with the original Call Her Daddy podcast, it was so popular because not only were they talking about sex and it was very funny, but you also got to eavesdrop on a conversation between two hot girls in New York. And I think for a lot of us, especially for me, that was a big draw to the podcast when they would just say things like, oh, when a guy flies you out. And I would be working at my corporate job being like, what do you mean when a guy flies you out? Are you getting flied out? So it was just really interesting to see their dynamic and how like they could be so rich and beautiful in New York, but their apartment was an absolute pigsty and you got to see behind the scenes with the vlogs. So even though I'm definitely going to rip Alex Cooper like multiple assholes in this episode, do know that it comes from a place of authentic love. Like I really did think that the original podcast was so fantastic, and it makes me very sad to see what Alex Cooper has kind of like turned into as the years have gone on. And by the way, for what it's worth, when Sophia did come on the Fluently Forward podcast, we did not talk about Alex Cooper. I didn't ask her about it before or after. I didn't want to freak her out by like having big opinions. So just know that everything in this episode, it's my own opinions, okay? It's nothing that she said. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into the episode. There's a lot to cover. I'm going to try to do things in kind of a chronological timeline order. So let's start at the beginning because we kind of have to. So where I left things in my podcast in 2021, the original podcast of Call Her Daddy had been separated. I think Sophia was in Utah at the time. Alex was in LA with her new podcast, Unwell. And I don't think Alex was even interviewing celebrities at that point and doing this kind of like, tell me about your trauma, Selena Gomez, and everything you've gone through. And she wasn't yet being coined as Gen Z's generation of a Barbara Walters, which is something that Rolling Stone magazine has called Alex Cooper, which is absolutely crazy. And we're going to get into that. But the first thing that I want to comment on is something that I think I now have insight into as a podcaster myself for the past 5 years. And that is the hypocrisy of Alex Cooper giving Sophia shit for involving her boyfriend in her career. So for those who might not know, one of the main reasons why Call Her Daddy broke up was because Alex and Sophia were looking to make more money off of the podcast. They were not being paid by Barstool Sports and Dave Portnoy what was fair to them. They realized this a little bit late in the game from other people telling them. And one of the people who told them this was Sophia's at the time boyfriend, who they called Suit Man, but his name was Peter Nelson. He was like an executive at HBO and he was dating Sophia. And apparently he told the girls, you guys are not getting paid what you deserve. So they started looking into it, taking meetings with other companies, and they realized, oh my God, we're really not getting paid what we deserve. I believe that their contract, this was either one that Dave offered them after there was a little bit of a kerfuffle with them or right before. But the number that we have from the public is that they were getting paid around, or they were going to by Dave, $500,000 a year, plus bonuses and a tiny, tiny fraction of all of the merch that they sold through Barstool. When this number came out, all of the normies online were like, how dare these girls stop the podcast or try to make more? They are making at least $500,000 a year each. That is so much money just to once a week come in and talk about your vagina. And basically, this whole narrative started that Dave Portnoy offered Alex Cooper a deal where he was like, finish off Call Her Daddy for a year with Barstool, being paid this amount. And then after the year, you can go and start your own podcast. And Alex Cooper took that deal. And it was phrased to the public as like, wow, how smart of Alex Cooper to do that. She just had to hang in there a little bit longer, keep the Call Her Daddy IP, and she was able to do that. Sophia, on the other hand, had her boyfriend Peter Nelson in her ear, making her greedy, having her want all of this money, and because of that, she didn't take Dave Portnoy's deal, and it was a mistake. Now, shortly after this happened, Alex Cooper got a deal with Spotify for $60 million, and this had a lot of the general public thinking Alex Cooper made the right move, because she now has $60 million and Sophia Franklin doesn't. Now that I have been full-time for almost 4 years in the podcast industry, I can tell you with 100%, like 10 toes down, Peter Nelson, Suit Man, was 1,000% right telling them to get more money and 0% wrong. Sophia Franklin was 1,000% right, 0% wrong. Call Her Daddy, the original podcast, when they were both doing it together, they were charting pretty consistently number 2 every single week. At the very least, they were in the top 5 globally of all podcasts every single week. They were right underneath Joe Rogan. The fact that Dave Portnoy was paying them $500,000 each every year was basically highway robbery. And I know that sounds so crazy to say because it's $500,000 a year. It is insane. This is a little bit of insider stuff I'm going to tell you that I've heard through the grapevine. These are numbers that I had clarified back in 2023. Joe Rogan, with his podcast, number 1 in the world, was making $32 million a month. And that's because he had over 2.5 million listeners on every episode. Okay, so take that in. Even if we cut Joe Rogan's numbers in half, because these are 2023 numbers and Call Her Daddy ended up dissolving in about 2020, let's cut Joe Rogan's numbers that I have, don't ask me how I have them, in half, and let's say that he was only making $15 million a month. That would mean that Joe Rogan and his podcast each year is making $180 million. And Call Her Daddy was right there below Joe Rogan. Were Alex and Sophia at the time splitting that in half and making $90 million each? No. Were they making $50 million? No. 20? No. 10? 2 million? They were making 500,000. That is insane. So when Alex Cooper on her YouTube video talking about the dissolution of Call Her Daddy was like, oh, Suit Man would come to us and he would say, you girls are not making industry standard. He was absolutely correct. They were basically getting robbed. The fact, and Alex Cooper even said this in her video, that apparently there was some sort of hockey podcast of like guys at Barstool, and they would kind of low-key be making fun of the girls behind their backs, being like they don't even know how much they're getting ripped off. And it's crazy that Alex Cooper in that same video could agree that they were getting ripped off, but then also say that Sophia and Peter were going about it the wrong way. Dave Portnoy was ripping these girls off with the original Call Her Daddy so hard, and he knew it because when they were not putting episodes out over COVID because the girls were going through some trouble and all of this stuff, Dave Portnoy was up their asshole and around the corner telling them to get back on the mic. And that is because the podcast Call Her Daddy was paying all of the employees at Barstool Sports. That's how successful it was. And they were getting paid $500,000 each. And I think it was like 2% of their sales on merch. 2%? For what it's worth, my podcast contract and most people's podcast contract is a 70-30 split. I make 70%, my management makes 30%. You're telling me these girls were making 2% on their merch? One of their hoodies, the one that said Unwell on it, made $1 million in profit, and they got 2% of that? So it's absolutely crazy. Like at the peak, sure, like we can't get too upset about it because they were making $500,000 every year. For what it's worth, podcasting is not super lucrative. Like, am I making that? No, but I'm making a fifth of that. And my podcast, Fluently Forward, is not 1/5 as popular as Call Her Daddy. It's maybe like 1/1000th. So anyway, I'm not saying all of this because it's like, oh my God, like the girls were out on the street shaking a tin can for some money. I'm just saying all of this because the more I've learned about the podcast industry, when I look back at everything that happened with Call Her Daddy, I'm like, the way that Alex Cooper spun this narrative to the general public who doesn't know much about the podcast industry, she really made it seem like Sophia was being so outrageous and stubborn and annoying and greedy. Greedy, greedy, greedy. For what? Not wanting to get robbed by Dave Portnoy? And yes, $500,000 is great money, and Barstool was doing the marketing and putting it out and stuff like that. But when you're an influencer, sometimes you only have a few years to make money. And what they were doing with that podcast was putting everything out on the line, their sex lives, who they were dating, their family lives. Sophia was talking about the time that she went to jail. So I just find it really, really ridiculous that when Alex Cooper went on her YouTube video and basically said that she decided to take the deal and Dave Portnoy was being so nice, putting together this lovely deal that was so beneficial for them, and all they had to do was work with Barstool for a little bit more, you're putting together and out this narrative that Sophia Franklin is greedy. The criminal is right in front of you. It's Dave Portnoy. He's been robbing you from the beginning. He absolutely screwed you guys, but you're acting like Dave Portnoy is this Prince Charming and your best friend, Sophia, is greedy. Like, the more I know about the numbers, I just find it absolutely wild to me. Sophia Franklin and Peter Nelson were protecting Call Her Daddy by trying to get more money. And it's wild because Alex Cooper now really presents herself as this like great businesswoman who gets deals done and she can always get the best deal for herself. But she basically publicly got screwed by Barstool for the first year and a half of her podcast. So much so that the employees at Barstool themselves were gossiping about how funny it was that the girls were getting absolutely screwed by this deal. So then what continues to happen afterwards, and what is so nuts to me, is that Alex Cooper keeps Call Her Daddy, but she pushes Sophia out of it. She has to start her own podcast. And then Alex Cooper keeps up all of the old episodes that they have with Sophia. So even to this day, if you want to listen to an old Call Her Daddy episode, you listen to Alex and Sophia sharing their stories, and in between you hear ads running, and guess who's getting all of that money? Alex Cooper still. I just find that so distasteful. It wouldn't sit right for me, definitely, to be on the receiving end of it. And it wouldn't sit right with me to be the person who's doing it either. So anyway, after Alex goes solo with her own Call Her Daddy podcast and Sophia isn't involved in it, a little later down the road, she ends up getting this 3-year exclusive deal with Spotify worth $60 million. And at the time, it was the largest exclusive deal ever for a woman-led podcast. It was only second to Joe Rogan's Spotify-only contract. And it was like this big, big deal. And everybody was saying Alex Cooper won. And all of the episodes became Spotify exclusive. This was, July 2021. And I just remember thinking at the time, and I still do, a lot of that should have gone to Sophia because they were purchasing Call Her Daddy. Do I think the original Call Her Daddy show was worth $60 million? Absolutely. But that's the original Call Her Daddy show, not just Alex Cooper. So anyway, I just remember when that deal happened, everyone saying Alex Cooper won, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, Alex Cooper finagled, that's basically what happened. So then from 2021 to 2023, Alex goes solo and she does a little bit of a rebrand and overhauls the show's format because you can't have two girls talking about their sex lives when there's only one girl and one of them doesn't want to talk about her sex life. So Call Her Daddy kept the name, which personally I would have changed the name because it sounds so weird for her to say sentences like, Jane Goodall, welcome to Call Her Daddy. Like, what are we even doing here? But anyway, Alex Cooper decided to do a little bit of a rebrand, and Call Her Daddy became essentially like a celebrity interview platform. Rolling Stone called her the new generation's Barbara Walters, which is absolutely wild. And the content pivoted towards mental health, relationships, therapy, self-care, and big name guests. Keep in mind, this is a previous quote from Alex Cooper on Call Her Daddy, where it's from an episode called If You're 5 or 6, Die for That Dick. And she says, quote, if you are a 5 or 6, you are getting slammed into the wall. You are saying horrible, disgusting, filthy things to get this guy off. You're in overdrive, overtime, putting in all the stops, saying fucking porn star shit. Come on the face and make it fucking rain, baby. If you're a 9 or a 10, a guy knows that he has to roll out the red carpet. That's what Alex Cooper was saying for years on Call Her Daddy. But all of a sudden, she becomes the generation's Barbara Walters and starts talking about therapy, mental health, and self care. First of all, like, I'm not even going to get into like how backwards ass that is. Like, what are we even doing with something like this? But it's also just done poorly because Alex Cooper is not a good interviewer. First of all, I don't even think that you could or should Call Her Daddy a celebrity interview platform. That's not what it is. It's basically a publicity vehicle for celebrities to come on and get asked these softball questions that are pre-approved by Alex Cooper, and she reads them off on a cue card while wearing some Unwell sweatsuit that she's in, and she asks no follow-up questions. She's not interviewing people because she's not good at the concept of interviewing. And that's because she's a narcissist. I'm armchair diagnosing here, but I just think if you're going to interview somebody, you need to have qualities that Alex Cooper doesn't have. I don't think that there's an innate fire of curiosity in Alex Cooper about other people. I think to be a good interviewer, you need to have this authentic empathy and curiosity. They go down different rabbit holes. They take the conversation where it's naturally going to flow. And there's so many times with Alex Cooper on Call Her Daddy where a celebrity will say something like, oh, this happened to me and it really changed how I viewed my teenage years. And Alex Cooper will go, great. What's your favorite sex position? Like there's absolute no follow up. And it's almost so bad to the point where I think it almost comes across as like disrespectful. It's just such stilting conversation because it's not conversation. It's like these puff pieces. I really think of Alex Cooper as like this generation's, not Barbara Walters, but Jimmy Fallon. You know how a celebrity will go on a late night talk show host and Jimmy Fallon will always be there just to go, yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. And then he'll be like, now let's play some charades or put together a Mr. Potato Head. And like, that's the segment. You don't really squeeze any juice out of it. I feel like that's what Alex Cooper does with all of her guests. She does this weird oscillating spectrum of both being condescending to her guest and also way too familiar. So for an example, like, I don't know, if you listen to her with, let's say, Gwyneth Paltrow on the podcast, in the span of 1 minute, Alex Cooper will both say to someone like Gwyneth Paltrow, Gwyneth, like, you didn't really do that, did you? And then she'll say yes. And Alex will be like, oh, you did. Oh my God, I'm obsessed. That's the best thing ever to do. It's so inauthentic, which by nature to the viewer makes it painful. Nobody wants to see friction. Nobody wants to see inauthenticity. And that's just what Call Her Daddy is. And like it just pisses me off as somebody who grew up loving the internet and really loving the internet because it seemed like the Wild West, almost like the Americana dream was all over the internet. This idea that if you did have really good talent or really good creativity, or you could put together a good sketch, something good would come from it because of your skill. I think of, I don't know, like Shawn Mendes or Justin Bieber getting recognized on YouTube by their singing, or certain TikTok creators who have made really funny sketches and now they're on SNL. And all of those bits of the internet seem so joyful and wonderful. So then to see all of these statistics where people talk about how Call Her Daddy is the #1 spot for celebrities to be interviewed, and every single time you watch it, you go, this is horrible. There's tons of people online like Sean Evans from Hot Ones. Everybody talks about how his interviews are really good and he finds all of these interesting things about his guests and he can really connect with them. And there was a lot of rapport between whether it's him and Conan O'Brien or him and Sabrina Carpenter or him and Keke Palmer. So much chemistry between them. When has Alex Cooper ever had that with someone? And every single week she's getting the best people on and it just never, never, never hits. It feels almost like there's almost like a bureaucracy sense or like a red tape political sense. Like, when you go to the DMV and you're just like, every single time it's the worst experience. Paying my taxes, every single time it's the worst experience. Signing up for my health insurance, every single time it's the worst experience, but it's also the only experience that I'm able to do to get this. That's almost like how it feels with Call Her Daddy, like there's just something about it that feels not right. It's like when Harry Styles got the Grammy over Beyonce that one year for Best Album, It gives me that same feeling. Now, I will round it out and say something nice because I don't want to be like too heinous and awful and bitchy in this episode, but I do think that there is a good vertical that Alex Cooper performs well in, whether it's interviews or conversations or whatever. And I remember like a year ago, maybe I made a TikTok about this, and Fibula is his name, right? Connor Wood or Woods. He has a podcast of his own. I remember he left a comment on it being like, oh, this is a really good take. And I was like, he knows people who know people. Maybe he agrees with it. Who knows? But basically, the TikTok video I made was that I do think that Alex Cooper is really good when she is in a dynamic with someone where she is playing low status and she almost has a little bit of little sister energy. One of the things that I said in my 2021 episode about Call Her Daddy was that I almost saw little sister and big sister energy between Alex Cooper and Sophia Franklin, whether it was in their conversations or their vlogs. It was almost a little bit of like a Elsa and Anna dynamic from Frozen, where Elsa would have been Sophia Franklin and Anna would have been Alex Cooper. And I feel like Alex was always knocking on Sophia's door and being like, let's do this, let's hang out. And Sophia, I'm not gonna, I mean, now that I'm saying it, I feel like the metaphor makes a little bit of sense. Sophia, I feel like, was kind of like, I have depression. I'm staying in my room. I'm Elsa, like, go play with somebody else, Anna. And Alex was just always kind of, I don't know, I just picture her like in the vlogs, like knocking at the door. Anyway, all of this to say, in comedy terms, there's something called playing high status and playing low status. And this doesn't mean that you're like a high value market woman on the sexual marketplace or anything like that. It's just comedy terms. A good example of this is Conan O'Brien. He almost always plays low status. Conan O'Brien is the first person to make a joke at his own expense to talk about how he's inbred or like gangly or weird, versus somebody like Stephen Colbert when he was on the Colbert Report. His character that he played was so high status. Was he a high status idiot? Yes, but he was incredibly high status. You could almost think, if I had to compare late night talk show hosts, I almost feel like Jimmy Fallon and Conan O'Brien play low status, but like Jimmy Kimmel will play a little bit more high status for whatever reason. So, all of this to say, I think that when Alex Cooper is in that little sister low status energy, she does really well with people. I think that's one of the reasons why her dynamic with Sophia was so great, because it had that high status, low status, or like big sister, little sister energy riffing off of each other. And another person that I think Alex Cooper does this really well with, oddly enough, is Chelsea Handler. In any of the interviews that Alex Cooper will do with Chelsea Handler, Chelsea immediately goes comedically high status and Alex will go low status, and it makes for really good rapport. That's kind of the only time I've seen Alex have like good rapport with someone. But normally, I don't think Alex Cooper knows what to do because she is naturally low status. And I don't mean this in like an offensive way. Okay, once again, it's like the comedy terms, but she is naturally geared towards performing and doing the best comedically low status. But because she's talking about mental health and CBT therapy and being the Barbara Walters of this generation, you obviously have to be high status if you're doing that. So, because of this, in all of the interviews she does, it's so hard to watch because she, basically boomerangs back between high status and low status. And it comes across as either, I don't know, like puppy love obsessed with and just like in awe of a celebrity, or being kind of condescending and patronizing to them. And I think that's why the entire rebrand of Call Her Daddy doesn't work at all, because Alex Cooper can really only thrive in a low status comedic place. And if you're going to rebrand and talk about like attachment theory and mental health and self care, you can't be doing that from a low status place. So just throw it out entirely and don't do the goddamn rebrand. Nobody asked for this. Nobody wants Alex Cooper, who previously said, let me pull up a previous quote of hers. Quote, if you're gonna post group photos, make sure all of your friends are uglier than you. Boom, there you go. You said it, and it's the goddamn fucking truth. Nobody needs to hear about CBT therapy or attachment theory or like DBT or EMDR. I don't need to hear about that from somebody who once overlined her lips in a video and said she had to do it because she needed some DSLs. Now, once again, like, I'm not trying to be a bitch. I'm just trying to say, like, it just doesn't work. And also, like, call me crazy, but like, just because her mother, I think, is like a therapist or a psychologist or something like that, I kind of only want to hear about that type of stuff from people who have a degree. Like, either give me relatable stuff as a relatable person, or give me professional stuff as a professional. Now, all of that said, I really do think that Alex Cooper is good playing low status. And I think she's really good when she's in this cheeky, mischievous, immature, trying to get away with things type of energy. And I think that's why her and Sophia worked so well. I even looked up this old bit that I remember from Call Her Daddy. And I think Alex Cooper, this is what I think she's good at. She's good at being bold, being self deprecating, giggling, edging somebody on. Maybe I said that weird. Let me rephrase. Yes, anding. She's really good at doing that and hopping on the bandwagon with bits and jokes and layering with somebody else that she has good rapport with. So I remember this old episode of Call Her Daddy when the New York Post had done a feature on the two girls for the show. And it ended up being this absolute like mess of a situation. If you go back and listen to the episode, it's still so good. But anyway, they were talking about how this journalist woman from the New York Post obviously like hated them because she wrote this scathing piece about the two of them and how all they do is talk about sucking dick, but they're actually probably these uptight frauds. What was the exact transcript? This was one of the things she said in the article, and they were recapping it on the podcast. The article said, quote, "They're probably not that racy behind closed doors. They're really just uptight frauds." And in the episode, Sophia said, "Okay then, bitch, explain to me why I've had chlamydia before." And Alex ends up yes-anding and jumping on the bandwagon by going, "Yeah, and me too, and me too." And then Sophia said, "Explain that, riddle me that, chlamydia, STD, you get it from sex, sexually transmitted disease." And then Alex Cooper said, "You don't get it from being a fucking prude, and I would know that because I've had it too. And we never planned on letting anyone know on the podcast, but here we are, once, maybe twice. Who knows? You could have had it so many times. You pop a pill and you're out with that thing." And Sophia said, "You don't get chlamydia by masturbating in your room alone. You don't get that by wearing a condom with your husband. You usually get that by being a little frisky." Alex says, "A little naughty." Sophia says, "And I know that there's one-offs." And Alex says, "But trust us, this was not a one-off." And Sophia says, "I was begging for it. I was really begging for the chlamydia at that stage in my life." That was such comedy gold. It's so low status in comedy, but it's also yes-anding and riffing off of it. And the irony of it, like, going high status with something that's so low status. I know I probably sound insane bringing these terms up, but it was just something that not to, put my dick out on the table, but I went to Second City for their comedy studies program. So for an entire semester, I was at Second City in Chicago getting trained in like comedy and how it works and blah, blah, blah. So basically, those two girls in Call Her Daddy going high status with something low status and being like, "Here's a trump card, bitch. I've gotten chlamydia." It's this absolute irony in it that makes it so funny. It almost reminds me of Clavicular, the looks maxing influencer, basically. He talks about looks maxing, and there was this funny clip that went viral because a guy on a podcast was asking him, "What do you do if your height is really, really short? How do you height max? Because what if you get to a girl's house and you have to take off your shoes and you can't wear your lifts in the shoes?" And Clavicular said, what you can do is you can kind of sag your pants down a little bit. And then when you walk around her house, you can be tiptoe maxing. That was such beautiful comedy. I don't even think he realized he was doing it. But the whole essence of maxing is basically adding this language appendix onto something to make it sound hardcore, but it's something that's not hardcore. So even the phrase looks maxing, I think, takes off because there's comedic gold in it. Working on your looks and wanting to be vain and primp and preem and look better, there's something inherently vulnerable and a little bit embarrassing about that. But if you add the appendage of maxing XXX hardcore to the end of it, it suddenly has like this beautiful, I don't know, like it makes it more comfortable for people to say. So that's why something like looks maxing or tiptoe maxing works, because you're pairing the low status working on your looks or tiptoeing with the high status maxing. And that's what makes those phrases really catch on and go viral. There was also a clip of Clavicular. He goes up to a girl at a party who's sitting alone and he goes, "Damn, you're really by yourself maxing right now." And once again, low status with high status. This is why you wouldn't ever hear somebody say that they're skydive maxing or they're anal maxing, because those are already two intense things going next to each other. It doesn't work. You need one to be kind of pathetic and vulnerable and the other to be hardcore. So that's why I think some of this Clavicular looks maxing stuff goes so viral. That's why I think the girls being like, "Actually, bitch, I've gotten chlamydia," like something like that, I think just tickles people's fancies in a way that they might not even understand the mechanics of it. But it's just so good because you're pairing these opposite ends of the spectrum together. And now, with the rebrand of Call Her Daddy, when Alex Cooper is sitting down with Kamala Harris or Michelle Obama or Jane Goodall, you can't do that. You can't talk about something serious and then talk about something light because it's no longer comedy. You're now interviewing somebody and you're talking about mental health and therapy. So there's no bits in there. You can't really do rapport with that. And especially if you're having different guests on, like a revolving door, you're not building bits and a dynamic with somebody. Anyway, so I just think that Alex Cooper is just not good at what she does now. She could get better at it if she decided to, almost a la Conan O'Brien, go for a low status place where she would stay and interview her guests from there and actually interview them with genuine empathy and curiosity and movement within the conversation. But that's just like not going to happen. It's just, I hate Call Her Daddy as a show now. Okay, let's move along in the timeline here. Sorry that I'm kind of going off on so many tangents, but in 2025, Alex Cooper gets married to Matt Kaplan, and this is a film producer, and she ended up meeting him on a Zoom business call in 2020. And apparently, it was like some sort of Zoom call. She was staring at his little Zoom screen the whole time, and she had nicknames for everybody, which I will say is so like girlhood. I do think it's really cute how they would have nicknames for people. I mean, come on, if you're a girl, we all have nicknames for guys. But anyway, she kept his identity a secret for a bit and she would call him Mr. Sexy Zoom Man, right? Mr. Sexy Business Zoom Man or something like that. They ended up getting married in 2025 and co founding the Trending Parent Company. And now they work together in a serious way, which we're going to talk about in a variety here. So, who is Matt Kaplan? He was born 1984. He grew up in LA and he's got like a very serious Hollywood resume. He went to Columbia. He was a quarterback on their football team and he interned for the CBS CEO Les Moonves. And he ended up working his way up to SVP at Lionsgate. And then he founded his own production company called Ace Entertainment. One of his biggest credits to date was the entire To All the Boys I've Loved Before Netflix franchise and its spinoff XO Kitty. So he has a pretty serious resume and background. He also has a romantic resume and background. He allegedly dated Ashley Olsen when they were both in Columbia in the early 2000s, and he was previously married to the actress Claire Holt, who was on The Originals, Vampire Diaries, and I think wasn't she also in H2O? Where like the girls turned into mermaids. Anyway, he was married to her from 2016 to 2017. They split after about a year. And has been some interesting stuff. Claire Holt looks kind of similar to Alex Cooper in the way that some people say Alex Cooper has allegedly been getting work done to look more like Claire Holt. But they're both like skinny, white, blonde women, I guess. And a lot of people have said that like Alex Cooper is really hung up on Claire Holt as Matt Kaplan's ex, and she's copying her and all of these things with what she does with the dog to what she wears and how she looks. And I will say, I'm going to give Alex Cooper a little bit of grace here. I would do that too. Okay. Even when I start dating someone, I'm curious about their exes. If I found out that one of their exes was a celebrity, I would just be listening to Obsessed by Olivia Rodrigo all the time. I would lose my mind. I would probably end up internet stalking them. And I feel like not that you're trying to wear someone's skin, but just if you internet stalk someone enough by osmosis and nature of it, you kind of end up maybe replicating, I don't know, like phrases that they say or a way that they do their hair. Like sometimes it really is subconscious. It's just because you've ingested so much about this person that you end up taking on forms of it. Now, if she was, for example, getting a little cursive G behind her left ear, then I would say that's kind of creepy. Deep cut for anyone who knows. Now, however, there was a little bit of a deux-moi rumbling about this Alex Cooper and Claire Holt situation. This was maybe like a year or two ago. Yeah, this was a year ago. This was a 2025 deux-moi rumor, and it said that Alex Cooper allegedly made an Unwell employee change her name at work because it was the same as Matt Kaplan's ex-wife, Claire Holt. So allegedly there was like a Claire at Unwell and Alex made the Claire change her name. So Alex ended up addressing this rumor on Harry Jowsey's podcast saying, quote, "The craziest rumor I've heard about myself recently is that I made an assistant change her name because she had the same name as one of Matt's exes. Someone shit it out and believed it." And yeah, I don't think that happened. Like, I don't know. I think Alex Cooper is crazy in a lot of different ways, but that would be really wild. I think what would happen is like you just don't hire somebody if they have the same name. And that one, maybe I could understand if I was like a little bit crazy. I will say, back when I was on Hinge dating, if anyone had my brother or my dad's name, goodbye. Like, I'm sorry, no. So who knows? But anyway, Alex Cooper gets married to Matt Kaplan, and I want to talk a little bit about their business partnership because this is where things get interesting and really fuse together. So, together, Matt and Alex launched Trending, which is the parent company of all of Unwell, and they did this in the summer of 2023. And what Matt Kaplan said about this business partnership infusion is, quote, the more we thought about it, the more it made sense to bring together Ace's production and financing expertise with Alex's ability to engage this influential community to curate new experiences. God, don't you hate corporate jargon, to curate new experiences? So anyway, because of this, Matt Kaplan now executively produces nearly every single thing that Alex Cooper does: the Unwell Tour, the Unwell Winter Games, the Hulu dating show Love Overboard, the Netflix show Let's Marry Harry, the Netflix drama Dead Letters, which is in development, starring Lucy Hale, the Call Her Alex documentary, and, by the way, the Hannah Montana 20th anniversary special. That was produced by Hopetown Entertainment and Unwell Productions. So, for anyone who was wondering, how on earth did Alex Cooper get the gig to interview Miley Cyrus for the Hannah Montana special? It's because her and Matt Kaplan were producing it. Now, at around this time, we also have another rumor from Dumois. This is in early 2025. Dumois published a piece with an anonymous tip from someone who claimed to have had a business interaction with Matt Kaplan. And the source said that Matt Kaplan equated his wife's power and presence with that of Oprah for Gen Z, that he has, quote, a very particular direction of how he wants Alex Cooper's career to unfold, saying that Alex Cooper is Matt Kaplan's brand. Now, that same piece in Dumois said that despite Alex Cooper advocating for women in her various projects, the Call Her Daddy and Unwell empire is, quote, led by men, most predominantly by her husband, Matt Kaplan. And at the very least, what we know on paper, Dumois rumors aside, is that they're basically 50-50 partners in everything that they do. Whatever Unwell does, Matt Kaplan is going to be producing it. Now, while I personally would be wary of getting into any business project with like a romantic partner, that's just me personally, but to each their own. What I find incredibly sinister and so hypocritical about all of this is that Alex Cooper gave Sophia Franklin so much grief for having her boyfriend advise her on business things. And now, not only is her romantic partner advising her on business things, he's getting a split of it. Back in May 2020, Alex Cooper went on YouTube and she put out her video. It was 34 minutes long and it was called The Truth About Call Her Daddy. And then she did her first solo episode, which was called The Funeral. She talked about Peter Nelson, Sophia's ex-boyfriend, suit man at the time, and how he was so like bad faith intention with what he was doing for Call Her Daddy. She said that he was, quote, not just there out of the goodness of his princess's heart, and that he instead wanted, quote, a piece of the pie. She speculated that he was positioning himself to eventually leave HBO and start his own podcast company. Imagine that. Imagine your romantic partner leaving what they're doing and starting a company that has to do with your podcast. Anyway, quote, he would always mention to us, oh, you're going to need a business manager. And as months went on, it was like, oh, wonderful, we're just fucked. It was just so obvious that he was there for his own benefit. Alex Cooper also said in this YouTube video and her podcast episode that her family was starting to raise red flags about Suit Man's intentions. She had a famous line from her YouTube video that a lot of her fans ended up repeating when Alex said, quote, I didn't have a boyfriend make my decisions. And this became the start of the entire like narrative switch on Sophia and smear campaign that Alex and Barstool Sports ran against Sophia Franklin and Suitman. I didn't have a boyfriend make my decisions. It started gaining all of this traction in TikToks and tweets. And there was this big contrast between Sophia and how she just let her boyfriend call the shots versus Alex, who was going it alone. Well, then cut to like a couple months later, because in 2020 was when she met Matt Kaplan. And then she ends up with this Hollywood producer. They get married and now they have a business together where he runs all of her shit. It's just so wild. I mean, even if you take the hypocrisy of what she said about Sophia and Suitman out of it, it really is rare for a podcaster to do something like that. Joe Rogan does not run half of his company with his wife. Even celebrity couples that are like famous in the podcasting sphere, I'm thinking of like Dax Shepard and Kristen Bell. Kristen Bell has producing experience. She works in movies. She doesn't produce what Dax Shepard is doing. But Alex Cooper does have that dynamic with her husband. And I wouldn't even say that being partners, business and romantic together is bad, but it's absolutely hypocritical based on what she said about Sophia before. Because when Sophia's boyfriend was helping them get a better deal and using his industry connections and knowledge to help the girls leverage more out of Call Her Daddy, to Alex, it was shady, suspicious, greedy. There's that framing again. And something that Peter Nelson was only doing for his own benefit. But now, just a couple months later, when Alex has her romantic partner come on board and use his industry connections and knowledge to help her leverage more out of the Call Her Daddy brand, it's totally fine. If Sophia does it, she's a stupid idiot who had a man walk all over her and a man made all of her decisions. But when Alex Cooper does it, she's a businesswoman who's speaking with like Forbes and Business Insider, and she's so good at business and she always gets what she wants and she's doing it for love. And it's a good business decision. This is quite literally like the essence of hypocrisy. You have two girls who are in the exact same position. They have a boyfriend or a partner in the industry who is in a similar field. They get involved. And it's bad when Sophia does it, but great when Alex does. And to make things even worse, what Peter was doing, or Soup Man was doing with the girls, was basically pointing out, you guys are getting robbed, which they were. They were getting robbed and saying you should be making more money. Dave Portnoy and Barstool is going to be holding you guys back. So he quite literally saw that they were getting taken advantage of and wanted to level the scales and the playing field. Meanwhile, it seems like when Alex met Matt Kaplan, she already got, what was it, like a $60 million deal, and then he came on board. So if anything, that action looks way more like I'm trying to take a piece of your pie, whereas Peter Nelson with the girls was saying, I'm trying to get you 4 pies. Like, oh my God, I don't know how, like if I was Sophia Franklin, I would be seeing red every single day with the amount of hypocrisy that happened. And then we're going to move on to another point of the hypocrisy, which is Alex Cooper calling her network and everything to do under the umbrella Unwell, which is a term that Sophia went famous for creating. You must be kidding me. You must be kidding me. So here's the origin of the phrase unwell. The phrase unwell came up in a Call Her Daddy episode where they were talking about a moment when Sophia, like in her past, was working at Morgan Stanley and she was at Coachella and she had some sort of work obligation the next day and she was like too hungover. She couldn't come in for it. So she sent a 2-word email saying that she needed a sick day and it just said, I'm unwell. Or it was something like, I can't come in. I am unwell. And that was it. It was funny because of like how vague and dramatic it was. And that was the whole email. And she told the story on an early Call Her Daddy episode. I think it was episode 25, people say. And it became like one of these bits in Call Her Daddy to say that like instead of being hungover or not doing great, like I am unwell. You know, it's just like a great catchphrase. It's very funny. Everybody loved it. The phrase took off. It became one of the Daddy Gang catchphrases. And they actually turned it into merch. There was an Unwell sweatshirt. I think it was like, I don't know. It was gray. It said Unwell on the front. It made over $1 million. And by the way, collectively, the girls were getting 2.5% of all merch sales, which once again, in the world of content creation is highway robbery. Like I cannot stress that enough. So anyway, Sophia coins this phrase because she tells it of her story, of her life. It becomes iconic. It's put on a hoodie, makes $1 million. They really get squat out of it. Then Sophia gets pushed out of the podcast in 2020 and receives none of what came later. Alex kept that phrase in orbit throughout her Spotify era. They're still selling merch with it, saying that things are unwell. It's still something that she's saying. And then in 2023, when it's time to name her media empire, she names it the Unwell Network. Her tour is the Unwell Tour. Her hydration drink is Unwell Hydration. She creates the Unwell Creative Agency and Unwell Productions. So this entire thing that was Sophia's punchline is now a brand media empire worth over $120 million that she doesn't get a single cut of. What's even more dastardly was like the rewriting of history that Alex tried to do. Alex had her friend Lauren, or I think it's pronounced like Lauren or something like that. She had her on the podcast and they tried to claim that Unwell was their thing. And they said it all the time before they even knew Sophia, even though throughout the original Call Her Daddy, it was always Sophia's story, Sophia's email, Sophia's thing. But I guess they wanted to keep making money off of Unwell merch. So they were like, oh no, like we've always said it, blah, blah, blah. If I With Sophia, I wouldn't, now I'm not seeing red. Now I'd be seeing burgundy or something. I think I would just be seeing hallucinations. I would be like so upset with the injustice of it all. But first of all, with Alex Cooper, to name your entire thing, like I just think we've all had friendship breakups and things that go south and don't do well. Normally, you don't want to take anything from that era, especially if you were somebody fucking someone over and you got $60 million from your creation together and they got nothing. The idea that she would take Sophia's catchphrase and use it to name her entire network, first of all, it just shows to me that she is so devoid of creativity or authenticity, originality, anything like that. You are a creative, you're in the creative space, and you can't think of anything else to name your network. I have Fluently Forward as a podcast. In the past couple of years, I have come up with hundreds of concepts for new podcasts. I'll share two because I am excited about them. One, it would be called Star Treatment, and it would be like my PR ideas of like what different celebrities should do, like how to get out of the Kia asylum or the aesthetic for their next album. It would be like a prescription, a pitch, a plan for them. And I would call it star treatment because it would have that double entendre, like celebrities get the star treatment, but also here's your treatment plan for what you should do as a star. And the branding would have all of these stars on it and it would be very nice. That's a podcast I would love to do. And then another one would be Society, where it ends in TEA. And it would be all about like the cultural zeitgeist and what certain things mean, like a sociological lens on things that are trending, like the maxing language, why tiptoe maxing is so funny or looks maxing is so big. We would talk about it all on Society, and the merch would be tea bags. Anyway, all of this to say, like, you put me or any other content creator, authentic content creator, in a room for an hour with a notebook and a pen, and you should be able to come up with like 100 names and concepts for a media empire. Alex Cooper should be able to do this on her own. Even if she can't do this on her own, she has an entire team of people. They should be able to do it. Even if they can't do it, she could hire a consultant with the $60 million that she got from Spotify to do something like this. There's no excuse or feasible reason to me why she should name everything Unwell when it so clearly came from Sophia. I also think like it just has to be evil at this point because Unwell doesn't even work. Like to name your the Unwell creative energy, who the hell would want to work with that? The Unwell tour? Who wants to go to the Unwell tour? What really takes the cake is the hydration drink being called Unwell. This is a drink that's supposed to like hydrate you and have electrolytes and nutrients and make you feel better. And you're calling it the Unwell hydration drink. It's like oxymoronic. It's so evil. That would be like calling a skincare brand Flaky or a food company the slimy food company. Like, what are you even doing? It almost feels so pointed and like nasty and petty towards Sophia that it's like encroaching on making bad business decisions. Why in the hell are you naming your hydration drink Unwell? For reference, Logan Paul, who I think she copies like a lot of what he does. Oh man, we could talk about Alex Cooper and Logan Paul. I could talk about this for 4 hours. But anyway, he named his energy drink Prime, okay? Prime, Power Aid, like power or prime. Like you want to have a drink to feel better because it's supposed to make you feel better and you're calling it Unwell? Like, and she's rebranding to say that I'm talking about mental health and therapy and self-care but it's called Unwell. But you're supposed to be talking about self-care, but it's called Unwell. Like it quite literally is such a backwards business decision that I feel like it has to be like pointed and antagonistic towards Sophia. But you know what? What's in a name? Sometimes history writes itself in a name because unwell things have, in fact, been happening at Unwell. One of the things I want to talk about is how one of the first content creators that Alex Cooper signed to the Unwell Network was Alex Earl. And she had the podcast Hot Mess with Alex Earl, and it debuted in September 2023, hit #1 on the podcast charts immediately. But she's not with Unwell any longer. And why is that? So, there were different online detectives and then the press who started picking up on some things that were happening in the fall and winter of 2024. So, this would have been about a year after she had been with Unwell. Number one was that Unwell stopped promoting the show Hot Mess. Their social accounts had really been pumping up Alex Earl's podcast, and they suddenly went a little bit quiet on it. And instead, they were really pushing forward Hallie Batchelder's podcast, which I think is called Extra Dirty or something. And a lot of people were like, oh, Alex Cooper tried to make, I don't know, like Alex Earl her mini-me, but it didn't work. So now she's trying to do it with Hallie Batchelder, which I think they probably have more in common, but whatever. Then in February 2025, there was a Super Bowl snub. And this is when Alex Cooper had an Unwell Super Bowl party in New Orleans for the Super Bowl that was happening. And Alex Earl was in town for the game, but she didn't show up to the party. So the speculation got a little bit louder. Then in December 2024, Alex had her dad TJ on her podcast for an episode that was called Family, Finances, and Football. And Alex's dad manages both Alex and Ashton's careers. And during the episode, Alex mentioned that her dad is good at having, quote, hard conversations with people throughout every deal when they don't realize Alex's full potential or what, quote, she needs to be doing. Her dad then brought up an incident that he had to handle for his daughter recently, and he described it as this, quote, a business situation, but it was also something else. He said that he, quote, wasn't happy about it at all and still isn't. And then after he finished talking, his other daughter, Ashton, said, T. Anyway, the internet lost it, and it felt like that was like a little bit of a hint of something that could have happened. So in February 2025, Alex Earl exited from Unwell. It was reported that her podcast would no longer be distributed by the Unwell network, and she had a TikTok after the news on February 28th. It was an unget ready with me, and she said that her week had been meh, and she acknowledged the, quote, chatter without really explaining anything. Then on March 26th, she had a TikTok that was a little bit more direct. She said, quote, I have to put a pause on podcasting right now for the foreseeable future. Don't really want to get into the details of it all, and I kind of can't get into the details of it all right now. Now, a lot of people hooked in on that word can't. I can't get into the details of it now. So are you legally gagged? Like, is there a legal reason why you can't? Alex Cooper then ended up publicly responding on Instagram. She said, quote, on her stories, hi, I can see your comments. Alex not being able to podcast has nothing to do with Unwell. IDK why she can't / what's going on. Unwell gave her everything back. She owns her IP. Then Us Weekly had different sources that kind of revealed some stuff. They said, quote, there's a lot of tension. A second insider said that Alex Cooper and Alex Earl clashed over business, which led to the end of their friendship. I don't really know if they were ever close friends, but it says, quote, they've had a lot of drama between them since they decided to collaborate on Unwell. Then the dad angle kind of came up. A source told us that Alex Earl's dad, TJ, quote, got more involved in her business decisions and did not like what Unwell was doing and ultimately thought it ended up not being a smart business move. This just reminds me so much of everything that was happening with Alex and Sophia and Barstool Sports. I find it really crazy that in all of this that happened, Alex Cooper claims to be such like a smart businesswoman who knows the inner workings of a deal, and she's never been pissed off at Dave Portnoy for basically robbing her with the success of their first podcast. And now it almost seems allegedly like this could be something where I'll be your father figure. She is now doing what was done to her essentially. And maybe having clients come on the Unwell network and giving them a very small percentage of what they actually deserve and keeping the bulk of it for herself. Who knows? Okay, who knows? So then we have Alex Earl later telling the Wall Street Journal that it was, quote, behind the scenes and a little bit of a hot mess. And then there was another TikTok in March 2025 where she described being, quote, on the phone with lawyers trying to figure out what was going on. Then, in August 2025, Alex Earl posts a TikTok referencing her co-star horoscope for the day, and it was saying that she could start some shit today. And a fan commented asking what happened with Alex Cooper, and Alex Earl replied saying, quote, how much time do you have? Dumois enters the chat once again with a tip in early 2025, and it has a separate update about the Alex Earl drama. It said that Alex Earl had, quote, a laundry list of reasons for her growing resentment toward Alex Cooper, including her treatment and her contract terms for Hot Mess. The same source alleged that Alex Earl was waiting to pull away 100% from Unwell, and that Alex Cooper's reputation is not in the best place right now in LA, and that people in LA have noticed her willingness to end female friendships. Now, I have it on Rumor Mill Authority from a friend of a friend that apparently there were some mutuals in between Alex Cooper and Alex Earl, and Alex Cooper was asking a lot of those mutuals to pick in between Alex Earl and Alex Cooper, and a lot of the mutuals allegedly picked Alex Earl. There were some other interesting things that happened too after this. Alex Earl and Claire Holt, that's right, Matt Kaplan's famous actress ex, were seen hanging out. Alex Earl has this volunteer event called Meals and Heels where they like meal prep meals for the homeless or something in high heels. And Claire Holt came to one of the events and they were seen together. Is that just because Claire Holt, I think, also happened to live in Miami? Hmm? I don't know. It's suspicious, isn't it? Now, I have heard things over the years from friends of friends and people who know people who know people. And all I will say is that I just have it on good authority. I can't really say it publicly, but I have it on good authority that if you had to take a side in Alex Cooper versus Alex Earl, I would take Alex Earl, okay, if I was a betting woman, if you were putting money on the line. I also heard T that Alex Cooper got a new deal. Basically, after her Spotify deal ended, she then got this big deal with Sirius XM for like $120 million. And people were like, oh my God, her deals just get bigger and bigger. But what I've heard from people on the inside is that she had to get that deal with Sirius XM because Spotify did not want her back. And that is because her numbers were not doing well. Hence, having to create a production and have other people underneath her. And apparently, a big part of the reason why SiriusXM gave her that big deal was because she had huge talent like that Madeline RG girl and Alex Earl underneath her. And they were really carrying the bulk of the ship of Unwell. Which now brings me to stuff that I've been screaming about, probably only on Patreon, but I've been talking about this for so long, and that is how Alex Cooper and Call Her Daddy is fudging her numbers. And nobody else seems to be talking about this. I'm the only one who's just like ranting alone talking about this. So here's what happened. A couple years ago, I went to a podcast conference. I think it might have been in LA or it might have been the one in Denver. I forget exactly where it was. And I was talking to this company that had a booth at the conference, and they were telling me what they did. And they were like, we basically can get your podcast more downloads. And I was like, tell me more. Not because I would want to do this. I'm way too scared of like ever fudging numbers. I feel like if I do anything, like I sweat even thinking about it. I'm like, I would be caught. I would be found out. The IRS would audit me out of everyone. But anyway, I was talking to this company and I was like, tell me how you do this. And they were basically saying that what they do, I don't know if there's a name for it, but they will get downloads for different people's podcasts by inserting your podcast into iPhone games. So, you know, when you're playing Candy Crush or Subway Surfers or Spider Solitaire, so many good games out there, and you want to get extra coins or extra gems or diamonds or something, you can watch an ad to get some of those free diamonds or gems. And what they do is that they'll show you an ad, but in the background, they will be running secretly like 30 seconds of a podcast. And a download or a listen for a podcast counts once there's 30 seconds of listenership on it. So basically, that's what some of these podcast companies will do. And it pisses me off so much. And like I've seen it over the years of how these numbers are changing and people only want to advertise, which, as you know, like we've had some months here on the podcast where our only sponsor is Hero Bread. Shout out to Hero Bread. We love them. But anyway, and that's because a lot of ads are now going to these big shows, and these big shows are inflating their numbers through these fake ass ways. And there was this whole piece that happened with Bloomberg a few years ago where they were talking about different companies that were inflating their numbers with these mobile advertising firms. Now, the main thing that they talked about was a company called the June Group or JUN Group. And this was a partnership that they had with mobile apps like Subway Surfers, where it would show a banner ad mid gameplay. And if you tap the ad, you get currency in your like stupid Subway Surfers game. And then it opens silently and secretly that podcast web player in the background, and a podcast episode will auto download onto your phone, and that counts in the podcast metrics as a listen. So it's like, see, somebody in Nebraska listened to the podcast. 100 people in Nebraska listened to the podcast. But no, they didn't. It was 100 people in Nebraska playing Subway Surfers. So anyway, that piece in Bloomberg that came out did not talk about Alex Cooper, but I remember this because I was at the podcast conference and I was talking to this company at the booth, and they were some company that I remember was like Mom or like Maui or something. And I know because I got a free t-shirt from them and it said MOW with a heart tattoo on it, you know, like those mom tattoos that you get. Anyway, I like slept in it for a couple of nights. Anyway, all of this to say, it was in my head because I remember the week after that conference, I saw a news article come out and it said that Alex Cooper and Call Her Daddy had been using the MAU network to inflate their numbers. And I was like, holy shit. And I clicked on it. And I remember I thought it was a big scandal, but it didn't appear anywhere on Reddit. It didn't really take off on TikTok. But sure enough, I went back and I was able to find this piece. And it says, marketing company MAU Pod, used by several top podcasts, promises a significantly elevated position in the Apple Podcast charts through a tool it doesn't disclose publicly. The tool advertises to mobile game users, telling them to follow Call Her Daddy on Apple Podcasts to earn tokens. And if users click through, they're directed to a landing page for the show where they can subscribe or listen to recent episodes. This was around 2024. It says the profile noted that Alex Cooper's podcast recently slipped in Spotify's top charts, falling from position 2 to number 23. Call Her Daddy had even fallen behind a show that Alex Cooper helped create with her new media company, Hot Mess with Alex Earl. In the profile, Alex Cooper simply brushed it off, explaining that charts fluctuate. But then she started using this Mao Pod company, and suddenly Call Her Daddy was back in the number 2 spot. But was it there legitimately? I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. This is all alleged. But when I talked to the company with their booth, they were basically like, yeah, we can guarantee you downloads. Come on. Like, it's just, I feel like there's not much that I can like say with my chest out, but I would reason and guess hypothetically that those are fake numbers. And I can't say too much, but once again, it's like I've been doing this for 5 years. I go to these podcast conferences, I talk to people, I know other people who are in the podcasting network. And let's just say when I did my pop culture predictions over on Patreon for 2026, when I said that, like, I think that the glass house of Unwell is going to fall in on itself, I was doing a little bit of insider trading with that prediction. Or at the very least, what I would say is that if you listening right now are an advertiser and you want to advertise on the show Call Her Daddy, I would maybe pick another show to advertise on, because you might not have people actually listening to your show, even though the numbers say that there were listens, but there aren't. Okay, so now let's talk about what's happening trending, and why we are doing this episode this week. And that is because this week, the Unwell Winter Games is about, which is a new show. It's a 4-episode YouTube reality competition, and it is Unwell's first self-produced original competition content. So it's filmed at this luxury chalet in Park City, Utah, and they have all of these different like influencers and reality TV competitors who are going to be split into teams, and they compete in mental and physical challenges over 4 days. I will say, like, the physical challenges are fun, but I also feel like content creators and reality TV stars have such a reputation of just being like these absolute idiot dimwits, which, like, by the way, it's a reputation. I'm a content creator. I'm only a little bit of a dimwit. Anyway, I think it would be really fun if there was a reality competition series, but it was only mental challenges. Like, only mental challenges. I'm talking like when Ethan Klein and Trisha Paytas for the Frenemies podcast did Are You Smarter Than a Fourth Grader? Like, let's see, are they smarter than a fourth grader? And like, I think it would be funny, you know? I'm not saying the reputation is meant to be there, but I think it would be pretty funny, you know? Anyway, so they're going to be doing this on YouTube. It premieres April 6th, and then they have new episodes daily on April 9th. And I'm not going to lie, I'm going to watch because I think it's a pretty interesting idea, but the cast is very controversial. So we have a few cast members on here. Number 1, Alyssa Violet, quote, the OG influencer. This is something that I wanted to bring up because I've always had a pet working theory for a long time that Alex Cooper is obsessed with Alyssa Violet. She is the Selena Gomez to her Hailey Bieber, or like whatever. I just think something is going on with Alex Cooper and Alyssa Violet. So Alyssa Violet, who I'm sure if you're listening, and like most of you probably know who she is, she was the OG YouTuber girl back in the day. She was Jake Paul's girlfriend, but none of us knew that until later. She was part of Jake Paul's hype house. What was the name of his hype house? Team 10. It was Team 10, and they were on YouTube, and they were in this mansion, and she was like the only girl in the hype house, and there were these 2 twins who could dance, and like one guy who played piano, and then Jake Paul who did his vlogs, and together they would make content. And anybody just knows, if you're making content with other people, it does well. People want to see collaborations. People go from one channel to the next. I ended up watching some of Jake Paul's shitty little vlogs because I wanted to see a little sneak of Alyssa Violet in it because she was YouTube magic, you know? I feel like the best content creators are the ones who don't want it. Hashtag Sophia Franklin, hashtag Alyssa Violet. These people who just have a natural charisma, but they don't have the Jake Paul, Logan Paul, Alex Cooper drive in them to be like, I'm going to get up every day at 5 a.m. and vlog. But anyway, Jake Paul basically was pushing Alyssa Violet to make YouTube videos. And for a beautiful few months on YouTube, she was making these YouTube vlogs, and she was just a natural. Like, she's beautiful, she's funny, she's outrageous in public. She's bold. She does things people normally wouldn't do. And her vlogs just immediately, I think like the first one she ever posted got like 1 million views within a week. And she was just off to the races. Everybody was into Alyssa Violet. She was just that girl, she was a natural talent. And then it found out that she was in this like situationship with Jake Paul, and it was really toxic, and he would bring over girls and cheat on her, and she would have to listen to them having sex in the house. Anyway, it was like this whole thing. One day I want to do an episode on Alyssa Violet. What a fascinating character study. She ended up then dating FaZe Banks. He cheated on her too. She then dated Marshmello, the DJ with the marshmallow hat on, you know what I mean? And now I think she is dating some content creator whose entire content job is to like interview porn stars, kind of, who's that guy with the head? Adam Faze, Mike Malak type of situation. And TMZ recently reported as of a couple days ago that Alyssa Violet was in a domestic violence situation with this guy that she's dating. Apparently, he was like cheating on her again, and she came at him with a knife, and like TMZ was reporting on it. All of this drama. Anyway, all of this to say, Alyssa Violet is going to be part of the Unwell Games, and I find that very interesting. And just like my own little pet theory says that I'm sure Alex Cooper asked her specifically because Alex Cooper, before she did Call Her Daddy with Sophia, she really wanted to make it as a YouTube vlogger. And she would talk about that. She would still do vlogs on the side. And I do think Alex Cooper would be good for reality TV or vlogging because she has a very similar bold, outrageous, do things in public that people normally wouldn't. You got to have a little bit of audacity to be a good vlogger. Or if you're David Dobrik, you just need to have a audacious friend group and then you creepily film it all. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. But I remember going back and watching some of Alex Cooper's vlogs, and I was like, wait a minute. Like, I immediately was able to clock that she was doing a lot of the stuff that Alyssa Violet was. And I know that because Alyssa Violet also inspired me to do daily vlogs back in the day. And I was totally doing things similar to Alyssa Violet, like trying to make content and stuff. It almost reminds me of when Emma Chamberlain was popping off on YouTube, and then a lot of people on YouTube started to edit in a similar style to Emma Chamberlain. It was just something that I don't think Alex Cooper has ever said out loud. Like, I was really obsessed with Alyssa Violet back in the day, but I've just always thought, like, I'm sure she was. So I find it very interesting that she's picked for the Unwell Games. And yeah, I'd be curious if the two of them strike up a friendship. I know that last year or so, Tana Mojo and Brooke, forgetting her last name, pretty BPD, it's not Brooke Shields. Anyway, I'm forgetting her, Brooke Schofield and Tana Mojo. They did the Canceled podcast together, and they were talking about how Alyssa Violet was like the meanest girl in LA, and it caused this big cancellation of Alyssa Violet. Allegedly, Marshmello, the DJ, broke up with her because of that. But all of this to say, it kind of sullied the reputation of Alyssa Violet. And I feel like Alex Cooper has a reputation of her own now. And if the two are doing the Unwell Games together and they strike up a friendship, man, I would be titillated to see that. It's almost like those TikToks you see where they're like, if you could take the mean girl from like every single TV show and have a show where Blair Waldorf from Gossip Girl and Allison DeLaurentis from Pretty Little Liars and I don't know, Regina George from Mean Girls were all together, who would be the last one standing? For what it's worth, I think it would be Allison DeLaurentis. But anyway, I would love to see that. Like if Alyssa Violet and Alex Cooper were in a friendship together, who would be the first one to suck the other dry? Like who would be left standing? That is a show I would tune in for. I would love to see it. Anyway, the other cast members of the Unwell Games are like Anna Delvey, the scam queen, Dakota Mortensen, the toxic piece of shit from Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, that girl from Love Island, Huda, if I'm saying it correctly. I have not seen Love Island. I just know that she was also embroiled in some sort of scandal. It's just like all of these scandalous people. And I'm sure that these Unwell Games, if they're coming out this week, I'm sure that it was filmed months ago, maybe even like a year ago. So I'm sure that, well, these people kind of always had murky reputations. But what I basically think about this is so many people are saying Alex Cooper is platforming somebody who's problematic, blah, blah, blah. Why even waste your breath with that? It almost gives me the same feeling as when people are like, Donald Trump is a fascist. Okay, you're not going to like bother him by saying that. Like he knows that he is and he like doesn't give a shit. And I feel like it's the same with Alex Cooper because once again, she comes from this beginning background of being involved in YouTube, and YouTube is always about platforming toxic people to get more views. I mean, think about Shane Dawson's big series. Who did he platform and who did he try to redeem? Jeffree Star and Jake Paul. So I'm pretty sure that Alex Cooper would just be like borrowing from that method on purpose. Like, I think the idea that like she didn't know these people were problematic and she's like platforming, she definitely knows, and she's doing it on purpose, and she wants you to get riled up about it because she wants the marketing for the show. So anyway, that's about it for the episode. I hope I wasn't too nasty in it. I really tried to hold myself back. Like, I do think that there are some things about Alex Cooper that as a trait on its own, singularly, not within her, but if you pull it out, I could see how, from the right angle, a part of that trait could be fine. I don't know. I don't want this to sound like a hit piece because Alex Cooper has built originally something real. I just think she's fudging a lot of her numbers, and I think that it's a glass house. Her era in the OG Call Her Daddy of grinding in New York and pushing things to the limit and having that work ethic and being the engine and the driver to create Call Her Daddy, the original podcast, which was so good. And her and Sophia playing back and forth on each other and their banter. And, I really admire Alex Cooper in that era. I thought she did great things. But I think that there's a lot of things that are, in the nicest way of saying it, very morally dubious about her. And in my OG episode of Call Her Daddy back in 2021, you can listen to that. I put together this montage of like all of the times that Alex Cooper has just shat on women consistently. And I find it so this isn't even me being like, I'm a podcaster and she's getting more shine than I am. I'm like upset or jealous about it. I just find it insulting in general that Alex Cooper is now being called like the number one female podcaster with all of this empowerment behind her. And she's always been so great to women. And you look back on these episodes and she's saying that like all of the girls in Harvard are ugly, that when a guy cheats on her, it really helps her to see a picture of the bitch that he cheated with because she's always uglier and it makes her feel better. She's just always referring to people as bitches. And even in this latest era of hers with the rebrand, she won't specifically say that women are dumb idiot whores or just a hole or hookers or bitches or anything like that. But she will do the type of thing that I definitely clock where she'll be like, oh my God, yeah, like, I always think you should be nice. This is an example. Okay. She'll be like, oh, I always think you should be nice to the waiter. And it's always crazy when like Becky over there is like being so rude and like Becky keeps trying to get the waiter's attention. Something that you'll notice about Alex Cooper, the more you listen to her, not that I even really do anymore, but she'll always have these hypotheticals where she puts in like a woman's name, like Sarah or Katie or Becky or Ashley. And then this hypothetical woman that doesn't exist, does something so stupid and juvenile and very womanly and almost like a King Batch, Logan Paul, Vine era type of humor. So it just, like what can I say? It really frustrates me that Alex Cooper basically made a reputation and a name for herself and got famous and viral by shitting on women as a collective, and now just decides that she can snap her fingers and with the right publicist craft a rebrand for herself where she's this generation's Barbara Walters and she's talking about like mental health and self-care. Bro, it's just so wild. So anyway, Sophia has a memoir called Daddy Issues that's coming out in, I think, like October, November, sometime in the fall in 2026. And I'm very excited to read that. We're definitely going to cover it here on the podcast. We also have Alex Earl dropping little hints about how much time do you have in regards to what happened with Alex Cooper. And I just am getting this feeling, as I say, in my gut and in my butt, that the dam is going to break in some capacity on Unwell later this year. I know that some of those numbers are getting fudged. So I think the glass house is starting to have some cracks in it, if you get my drift. So I'll be watching. And you know what? I'm probably going to watch the Unwell Games because I do want to see how some of these people are in it. And I want to see what happens with Alyssa Violet. I'm really hoping for her to get her spark back, but I feel like she's got to move out of LA and just live somewhere else for a year. Because you know how they say you can't heal in the same place that you got sick? I feel like LA has just been pummeling that girl. So anyway, let me know what you think about all of this. Sorry to any of the Alex Cooper fans that I pissed off, but what can I say? I got to speak my truth. Feel free to share this episode too for anyone who like knows Alex Cooper or perhaps feels a little bit woozy about everything that happened with Call Her Daddy, etc. And for everyone on Patreon, I will see you on Friday for a new episode. All right. Bye, everyone.